turn this computer, here we go. Okay, recording in progress. With that said, let's set the rules, which is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You can share your story, but don't share other people's stories. And I tolerate no meanness in my classroom. So everybody be nice. Hello and welcome. I am Catherine Morgan. I am the founder of Point A to Point B Transitions. I'm a career transition coach and a business consultant to consultants. I've been doing this for 11 years. I've learned a lot. I am going to share what I've seen work with clients. We're going to talk about the elephants in the room, because if you're having trouble with your job search, these are the four places you'll probably be struggling. One, ageism, and I'm going to call it like I see it, and I promise I will be triggering some of you, and that's okay. You'll still get some strategies that will be helpful, or a different way to think about it. We're going to talk about bad business breakups, unexpected layoffs, toxic work environments. We're going to talk about regime changes, and we're going to talk about extended time in transition and different strategies for talking about that. But just to set the container, let me tell you that pretty much everybody is reinventing themselves in 2021, and it's just almost not that interesting a story. I've heard from small business owners who are like, oh, I'm over it, I want to go to corporate. I've heard people wanting to start businesses. I've heard people wanting to reinvigorate their current jobs. I've heard people wanting to get new jobs. You've probably seen the posts on LinkedIn about the Great Resignation. That is true. And now the great reshuffling, as the people who've resigned are looking for new jobs and job postings, and there's like, so we're all sort of rethinking it, and it's a good time. There are opportunities. My folks are getting jobs, and I'm going to share how. Does that sound good? Awesome. All right. So let me go to the presentation. It's in 4 parts, and I will be jumping back in the middle to take questions. I really want to answer your questions if at all possible, and if people are willing to share. If you're a little shy, you can put the questions in the chat, and I will do it that way. So, navigating around 4 potholes in job search. So we're going to be poking some sacred cows. I joke that my other title is poking sacred cows and identifying elephants in rooms. And I also have been known to call myself principal sparkitect, meaning I'll light a fire under your butt. So and spark you to get into motion. Now, there are some sacred cows like ageism. And just because everybody says something is true and they're like, ah, it's not always true. And by the way, sometimes even if something is true, and I'm going to do air quotes, it's not always helpful. So let's put that as a frame. Something might be true, but it might not be helpful. If you wake up in the morning and saying, oh, I'm 57 and nobody's going to hire me, I'm pretty sure that's not going to help your job search. Just saying. So here's what we're covering today again. Ageism, time in transition, regime changes. What happens when there's a new executive team and you've been there for 14 years and all of a sudden you're shown the door? It can be very jarring, and it happens all the time. And bad business breakups. And my best advice for getting around it. So let's start with the biggest elephant in the room. Wait for it. Ageism. Yep. Here's where you're going to get triggered. Ageism mostly isn't. Does it exist? Absolutely. If you're a size 2 and 22, you might be able to interview celebs on the red carpet. Me, middle-aged chubby woman, probably not. So in that situation, ageism. Trying to get into Facebook in your 50s, maybe harder. I've had people in their 40s and 50s get into Google, possible. But are there a lot of opportunities out there? Absolutely. Are there ways that you can stack the deck in your favor so that ageism doesn't apply to you? Absolutely. So here's the big reframe on the age thing. And you have to pull up and ask yourself, because of all this out in the ethos, you're going to get sucked into it was an ageism decision. Ask yourself, is it an age issue or a wage issue? Meaning, is your 10 or 20 years of experience worth 10, 20, 50 grand more to the organization? Do they need your judgment, negotiation skills, whatever? If a more junior person with less experience in their job function or less industry experience could do the job competently, then it is not age. Tell it like it is. Give it the right attribution, which is a money issue. And by the way, if you were the hiring manager on the other side, you'd do the same thing. Also, it's inevitable if you're on the more experienced worker side. Full disclosure, I'm 59. We have 5 generations in the workforce. We have an aging population. We have people in our government in their 70s. We have people in the workforce in their 70s and 60s. You'd be surprised how high a percentage that actually is. And we have an aging population. Boomers are a big part of the population. It's inevitable that wherever we're working, we're going to be working with much younger people, and they're going to be working with us, and we need to figure out how to make this happen. So this is another unpopular thing, which is, are you actually okay in a multi-generational workforce? Are you okay with your boss being 10, 15, 20 years younger? Are you okay with the CEO being in their 20s or 30s? If you're targeting fast growth, high tech companies, that's likely true. The visionary founder may be young, although you'd be surprised how many of those companies actually have people in their 40s and 50s running them. So you have to be okay with it, and you can't fake your way through this. You can't say, oh yeah, I'm totally fine with it. Because what I hear when we debrief from your interview, you're like, oh yeah, I met with the hiring manager. I'm like, oh, how was it? Like, really young. And did you just feel that? Like the clenchy feeling and a little dismissiveness? And so me as the candidate wasn't actually fine with it. And everybody's BS meter is very finely tuned these days. They're going to feel it. Nobody's that good an actor, most likely. The other thing is, do you come in, and this can be true, especially for senior executives, feeling like they're entitled to a certain level of respect, or they don't have to prove themselves in any way to their colleagues, subordinates, executive team? They should come in, I'm here. And that doesn't work either. Everybody has to prove themselves. And the other thing, and this is where I do a lot of coaching, somebody comes to me and they say, Catherine, I get past the HR screen, I meet with the hiring manager and with colleagues, and I never make it past the first, real interview, past the HR screen. And I immediately look at their body language, at their speech patterns, at what they're saying, and try and dig in if there's some form of passive aggressiveness or defensiveness, and there almost always is. You can record yourself and look for it. So in women, it's a tightness around the mouth. It's a pursing of the lips and a tightness around the mouth. In men, they're not actually doing this, but the energy is kind of like this. They've got their arms crossed and their one shoulder's back, so they're not square to the person they're talking to. And the energy of that to the person on the other side is like, convince me. And it does not work. It gives the other person a bad reaction. It says, yeah, nice guy, could totally do the job. Something was off. Next. I do so much coaching around it. And we can, if you are in that situation, I can usually fix it with you in, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes. But the flip side, if anybody younger's on the call, you have to be okay working with somebody who might be even in your same group and your same job function without being okay boomer. So don't assume we don't know technology. A lot of us are huge technology geeks. Don't make any assumptions. It has to go both ways, and we have to learn how to work with each other. The ways you can get around it as a candidate, apply for jobs where your years of industry experience might be beneficial. You've seen trends, you know how this business works, you know how these sales conversations go, you know how these marketing strategies work, whatever your thing is. Or go deep with your job function expertise. If you really know your stuff, in your deep job function, if you are a finance professional to end all finance professionals, go deep with that. Alternatively, if you're the generalist who has participated in strategy, in sales, in marketing, in operations, in tech, and I do have people who do that, and they're like, well, you know, I've done a lot of stuff. I'm not deep in anything. Nobody's going to take me seriously. And I'll say, go big and bold with that, because every company's running lean these days, and they need somebody who can contribute in multiple ways, because the person who can contribute in this group and this group and this group and see how the groups work together, that may actually be the superpower of 2021. And let's say you're like, oh my God, Catherine, my industry is imploded. I've been in travel and hospitality my whole career. I need to look somewhere else. Then come in with the outsider's perspectives. Take the best practices of what you've learned in that industry and transfer it to something else. The easier transition, if we look at it from a bullseye, is to go just one level out. So travel and hospitality, you know, what's adjacent to that? What's next? So think of it that way. All right, what else have we got? Now the question is, on my resume, Catherine, I have 30 years of experience. How do I capture my experience in 2 pages? I feel your pain. So here's a couple of strategies. I used to be very adamant about listing everything you've done, because you used to have to do that on all the online applications. It doesn't seem that's the case anymore. If you've had a break in your career, I spent 15 years in financial services. I spent the next 15 years in professional services. If my financial services is out of date or not of interest or something, I can leave that off. And there's a logical storyline from when I started in professional services. However, if for some reason that's valuable because you want to mention that you have industry experience in that, you can roll up the experience that's 15, 20 years old and just list the company, your title, that you can even leave off the dates if you want, something about what the company did, and one sentence about what the company does and one sentence about, you know, what your job function was. Or you can just leave it, just if it's self-explanatory, like you were a sales executive, you can say Bank of America sales executive, you know, retail sales specialist or whatever. Transferable skills when you're trying to get to a different job function in a different industry requires more messaging. The burden is on you, folks. Don't assume that everybody can get inside your mind and know what you're thinking. You can also upgrade your skills. Boomers get dinged for not being good with technology, not staying up with technology. Literally every human, well, okay, 98% of the people I talk to say they could upgrade their Excel skills. Guess what? Free training everywhere. Upgrade your Excel skills while you're in transition. If you want to learn some new software, show some basic understanding, go to software vendors' websites. I hear great things about Coursera. A lot of people I know are doing Coursera courses and getting certifications to show interest in emerging technology, think AI, because that's the wild, wild west. You can jump into something that's an emerging technology because not many people know more about it than you do because it's brand new. Or I know it's been around for a while, but people are just sort of jumping on the bandwagon now. And any certifications, but think twice about certifications. I find that often people think they need them and they don't really. They're just using it as a block so they don't have to engage with their job search. People who make the worst career transition decisions are like, I want this to be my next job before retirement. First of all, that sucks the energy out of the room and out of your job search. It's very heavy. And it makes you not get curious or it really just, retirement's fine. I know I have some friends who are really enjoying their retirement, but it's not necessarily the goal for everybody. It may not be an option for everybody, and it may not be right for you. Correlation is not causation. But early retirement has correlation with early death for men. A lot of people who could retire are choosing to work into their late 70s and 80s. My grandmother sold real estate until she was 87. She said it kept her out of doctors' offices, and all her friends who had tons of money and were retired spent all their time in doctor's office with random ailments. So just take that as a story. And this myth of out of time, I have heard out of time from people just out of college. Oh, my friends know they want to be doctors and lawyers, but I don't know what I want to be. I'm still figuring out what I want to be. You're rarely out of time. Like I said, my grandmother sold real estate until she was 87. We're living longer, we're healthier longer. Technology enables us to work longer, better. You're rarely out of time. I probably have 20 more years to learn something. You can get really good in 20 years. All right, so I'm pretty sure somebody wants to punch me in the face. Jackie, you're laughing. Do you want to punch? I know you don't want to, but what do you think? What do you hear from your clients? Jackie's a fellow coach. She's not here in job search.
Yeah, I just wanted I never got a chance to hear Catherine, so I thought I'd join you today. One thing I was gonna kind of chime in about when you talk about the job search and all my years of experience type of thing. I my business used to be a marketing communications firm. That's what I did before coaching, and I had a lot of projects where I brought in freelancers. And one thing that was really astonishing is that sometimes I brought in freelancers and they had like a lot of experience, but their attitude was kind of like show up and be there. They were kind of there. And I was paying them like 3 times more than I was paying the interns, and the interns were superior. They were excellent. So I think, to chime in on what you're saying, sometimes, the attitude that we're bringing to a situation, like these young people, these are still in college, they were like, let me add it, let me do this, let me do that. And so, it's to just agree with your point, sometimes it's useful to look at our attitude. What's your attitude? Like, are you feeling entitled? It is hard. Job searching is horrible in many ways, but sometimes you could be losing the job to somebody who's got huge energy and excitement about it.
Yeah. And hiring managers on the call will vouch for this. Actually, one person is on the call who told me this story. If you have 5 people who can do the job, who do you pick? The one you like. Why do you like them? Don't know. They asked a good question. They seemed enthusiastic. They, I don't know, they're ready to start, whatever it is. So you make these hiring decisions on your gut decision, and then your brain goes and scrambles to find some reason. One of the women on the call told me the story. She goes, I actually hired the least qualified person on paper because I just liked him and I really wanted to work with him. Okay. Yeah, that's what it is. Anybody want to unmute themselves or send me a question in chat?
Hi, this is Anibal, and I love when you put that the problem's not age, but wage. I really never thought that way. If I had seen that slide and just left the meeting, that would be worth the whole presentation just on that slide. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. A lot of people say that. I drop back and I'm waiting for people to throw stuff at me. Thank God, when I do this live, I kind of duck. But the woman who was the organizer, she goes, you know what, actually, that's totally true. And it broke my heart that I had to lose this great experienced person because it was just purely a budget issue. And we had to train up a junior person. It wasn't the right business decision, but that's what we had to do.
And I am a hiring manager, and I know exactly what to say about that. Well, if you were in their place, you would do the same.
You would do the same.
Yes, and I've done that. And I've done that.
Budget. You have a budget, right? You
there's-
can't find an extra 20 grand, even though you know it would make your life a lot easier to hire in
Correct.
somebody who would not need as much onboarding or attention or training. Like,
Yeah. So the hiring manager is not as powerful as many candidates tend to think. There are limitations. There are constraints, right? So that's why I thought that that's why I thought that slide was perfect. So thank you very much.
oh, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else have a burning question? You can put in the chat or unmute yourself. If not, we're gonna go on. That was the biggest and the most triggering part. Now we'll dive into the more hard part. Okay, off we go. Extended time in transition. So let's say you've been in transition for, people come at different times. 6 months in transition, they come to me, they're like, oh my God, Catherine, kill me now. What's I gotta do? So we go back in, we find some way to reinvigorate their job search. We rework their messaging or figure out their targeting or their networking strategies or some cold outreach or something that sort of jumpstarts it. But then if you've, for whatever reason, maybe you've had a sick parent, a sick kid, or some health issues yourself, or whatever, and you're out of work for a year and a half, you can be like, how do I talk about this? So there's a couple strategies. If you've been in a situation, and a lot of my clients have, just because of the age, I tend to work with people from say 45 to 62, they're helping a parent with end of life, and maybe any things with the estate after that take a lot of time, and their job search takes a back seat. How do they talk about it? Well, in that case, the general guidance is don't share a lot of personal information. But in this case, it makes sense to share personal information because it explains your time in transition and it's past. It will not be a pull on your time or affect your ability to do your job going forward because it's in the past. Yes, you'll experience grief and you'll have to manage your grief and support yourself that way. But the time that you had to spend taking care of that parent to doctor's office or hospital visits or whatever will be over. So in that case, I say share the story because no one's going to want to dig into that very much. And the hiring manager is saying, does this person have something that's going to pull on their time? Is there going to be absenteeism or time out of the office or time away from the job more than we can manage? So that situation's passed. I've also worked with people who have current health issues, and they go through the interview process and may or may not have to talk about it. If you have something physical like MS or Parkinson's and you have tremors, you're better off addressing that up front and saying, yes, I have Parkinson's, I'm fully able to work, my cognitive functioning is fine, I need this kind of accommodation, but there should be nothing that keeps me from doing my job. Like, you're better off giving them the information. They probably can't legally ask you that. They might anyway, but they're for sure thinking of it. So beat them to the punch and give them the information you need, and just be, enthusiastic about it. And yeah, it's a thing I'm working with. I'm fine. I'm ready to work. If you've been out of work, maybe you spent time with your kids, or maybe you took some time off or whatever, I find there's always something that somebody can talk about. I worked with a woman who was a stay-at-home mom, and when I did her resume, she actually had 20 different volunteer things that she had overseen and raised money and distributed funds and hired vendors and managed events and done all sorts of stuff that she put as not valuable because she wasn't paid for it. Conversely, if you helped your brother-in-law start his business, or you helped a friend with their social media marketing because you weren't doing anything, yeah, you can talk about that and put it somewhere. And even if you didn't get paid for it, don't undervalue it. I've worked for all the big consulting firms. We all give stuff away to get other business. It's fine. If you didn't get paid for it, doesn't mean you didn't learn something, or it wasn't valuable, or it wasn't a good talking point, especially if that might be the thing you want to go into. If you volunteered with a nonprofit, same thing. So whether you take the money part out of it, because it's not, don't lie. I never tell people to lie. Everything is verifiable, and clients can ask to see your tax, future employers can ask to see your tax returns and stuff. So don't lie. But you can say, I was working with my brother-in-law, helping him launch his business. I set up QuickBooks for him. I did the payroll. I got us on Gusto, or whatever your thing is. Doesn't matter if you didn't get paid. Okay, so I'm back. Who's got, did that clear up anything about your situations and how you might talk about it? I promise you that extended time in transition doesn't have to be a deal breaker if you get okay with it. If you go in and you're like, oh, hire me, I can pay my mortgage, like that doesn't work so well. But if you go in saying, yeah, I'm ready to work, I've been in transition, they're going to ask you what you've been doing. You got to come up with something. If you were just like, I have 3 kids at home and online Zoom classes took all my time, the right person is going to say, I hear you, I feel your pain, let's have a conversation. Like, you just have to be good with it and ready to work. Anybody have something they want to share?
Can I ask about COVID? Like how reasonable is it to you almost want to say, it's been quite a challenge in this COVID period. Like that's prolonged my my job search.
Yeah, it really shouldn't be a question. Like, as people interviewing candidates, like, you kind of want to leave that question out. Given 2020 and the giant dumpster fire that it was, was it that you're not finding opportunities? Was your industry impacted? What's the real challenge, Larry?
Yeah, it's really the opportunities that's been a challenge. So I'm
Okay.
looking for that senior role that you talked about, ageism at the beginning, and doing a targeted role and looking for that role that a junior person could not do, and that's what I've been looking for.
Yep, I say the
it's been
gray
a
hair of
challenge,
experience is valuable in those situations, and then point to.
But that's extended it, right? So
Okay,
I've had some challenges.
So I think that you can drop into your expert. You can say, you know what, I'm looking for a senior level position, the right opportunity with the right organization. And, you know, I'm looking for my right next step is what I usually tell people to say, which means that you're evaluating the right opportunities for you, the right organizations where you can contribute your best skills. It's more sort of changing your energy than there aren't any opportunities out there, but instead of saying you as the expert are evaluating, you know, your right fit and where you can make your best contribution. And obviously 2020 slowed things down a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, anybody else have anything they want to share? Okay. After 20 years of the company, I decided best spend 45 days in England. Yeah, that's great. If you did something interesting, if you backpacked across Southeast Asia, or if you went and did something fun, you know, good for you. I know you're a huge fan of England. That's awesome. I would totally, everybody should do that. All right, I'm back. Let's go. Regime changes. Okay, this is a bad one. Not bad, but just can do a tap dance on your head. Okay, so this happened to me. What happens when you have a job and you have a new boss every quarter? As soon as you break in your new boss, you figure out how they like to communicate, what kind of reports they want, what kind of activity they expect from you. I was in a sales role at this point. And then the next one has totally different ideas, and you just feel like an idiot the whole time, because as soon as you get your groove back and you've broken in your new boss, you get another one. That's tough. And it's hard to talk about as a candidate because you always felt off balance and you probably never really got your groove in that job. And that may be why you were let go or you opted to quit. Also, you can have a boss who loved you, but your new boss thinks you don't know what you're doing, or diminishes you, or has a very different management style. And you're like, what? I've been doing this for 10 years. And now all of a sudden, wow, maybe I don't know how to do this job. Oh my God, maybe I can't get another job at another company because I don't know what I'm doing. And you internalize it, and you just start spinning and questioning everything and losing your self-esteem. It can be terrible. And this is the worst of all of them. If you're at a director, VP, executive level, and you have a new executive team come in or a new senior manager come in, there often is, their wish is to have you gone, and they will make your life hell so that you will quit, or because they don't necessarily have the ability to fire you, but they will make your life absolutely miserable. And they are actually cleaning house so that they can bring in their people from their previous role or earlier in their career, their dream team, in to help them do this job. I had a client who, it's kind of the American dream story. She started as an executive assistant and worked her way up through all the way up through marketing till she was VP of marketing at this company. Note to self, she'd never gotten a college degree. She just started working and done so well, she'd gotten up to the VP level. She was there for, I don't know, 16, 20 years. And new executive team came in, new CEO and CFO, and all of a sudden she's out of work. And she's like, oh my God, I've only ever worked at this company. I don't have a college degree. What happened? How do I tell this story? She was just so filled with, and I had to tell her it had nothing to do with her. It was just a regime change, and they were clearly cleaning house. But it's very toxic and very debilitating as a candidate. And then sometimes the name on the door doesn't change, but everything else does. This can happen if you get different funding, if all of a sudden you get VC funding in and the whole corporate culture changes, or if the company goes public, or if the company gets acquired or acquires another company, and you're like, what? I've been here for a long time. I love these people. I love my job. This company, oh my God, this is a hot mess. I hate this. Everything's changed. Because your happiness as a worker really is about affinity with the people you work with. You more or less like what you do. You more or less like the people you work with. You more or less like the way the company does business. Then you're more or less happy. It's really just that simple. And hiring managers will tell you, well, maybe not, they should tell you, they hire for fit and they'll train for skills, or the good ones will. Does that make sense? Thumbs up? Yeah. Okay. Any questions about this? I just want to, thank you, Kimberly. I just want to say, if you were the victim of a regime change, it's not you. You're still a good worker. You're still a competent professional. You're still hireable. It was just, you had no shot. If they were deliberately cleaning house, it was just collateral damage, and I'm so sorry. Okay, last, we're in the home switch. Okay, bad business breakups. Okay, if any of you have been in a toxic work environment, I want you to take this really seriously. It is not a joke. If your manager is demeaning, if your colleagues are backstabbers, if you don't feel physically safe. I had a client who worked for a very big company, and she had someone on her team completely lose his stuff and pick up one of those giant heavy roller conference chairs and hurl it across the room. And she no longer felt safe in the room, in the building, anywhere near him, and had some big issues about it. She reported it, and guess who got fired? She did. Big chair throwing guy had some serious clout and didn't get booted. It'll do a tap dance on your head. I had a client of mine get fraternity level hazed at a top 100 companies to work for. It's a Fortune 100 company or something, best places to work. And they took pictures of him and put, I don't even know how to tell this story. They did some visual stuff to him. They completely hazed him for his religious beliefs, for some other stuff in a text chat that was off the company systems smartly. They got him so crazy, he had to quit. He ended up actually having to go inpatient and get his head screwed back on. And I knew this was coming because I had lunch with him and I said, look, these toxic work situations are so terrible. You've got to go see a therapist. You have PTSD. You've got to take this seriously. And he's in his 30s. So he's like, yeah, whatever. No. So if you have been hazed, beaten up by your colleagues, diminished by your superiors, race, gender, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, anything, seriously, take it seriously. You will have PTSD type symptoms. I'm not a psychologist, but go see one or get help however you need to get help. and this, even 10, 15, 20 years of service, we talked about this, it's gonna back up like acid reflux. You're gonna be like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then you're gonna have this like shamey stuff sort of creep up, and you're not gonna know how to talk about how you were let go. And some people even get this if they opted to take a package. By the way, if you're offered a package, always take the first one because that's the best one. So even if you took the package, you're like, oh, I don't know how I talk about this. Well, work with somebody to talk about it. Work with a coach, work with a friend, work with your partner, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. And the more you talk about it, it gets easier and easier. I used to not be able to talk about Arthur Andersen going out of business. I would cry. I could cry for you right now about that. And I couldn't even interview. So I started my own business for 5 years because I just couldn't interview. I just puddle up. So unexpected separations can trigger anxiety. Sometimes they trigger relief. If you hated your job and all of a sudden you don't have to be there anymore, and you can tell your partner, I got let go, wasn't my fault. That's okay. You may, in your job search, it's really important for me to say this. I swear that 80% of the people who come to me are having trouble in extended transition. It's because they've linked working with pain or fear, because of a toxic work situation or something else. And they're like, I have to work. I have a mortgage to pay. I have kids going to college. I have elder care stuff I have to pay for. And your body's like, that's painful. I ain't doing it. And you'll self-sabotage, or you'll get the flu, or like whatever. If you're really having trouble and you think you should be making progress, look here. You've linked working with pain, and there are ways to get around it. We don't have time on this webinar. If this is something that applies to you, reach out to me individually. I'll tell you how to do it. You can get past it though. So my best advice for you, be honest with yourself about what happened. A successful job search is mostly a mental game. Resumes, LinkedIn profile, really important. Getting your story straight, important. But get your head screwed on. You have to believe it's possible. You have to talk about anything that's a potential pothole and know how to navigate around it. Practice extensive self-care. If you had a toxic work environment, bad business breakup, take it seriously. Something died, grieve it. And rehearse the answers to tough questions. If you threw a fit and said, you can't fire me, I quit, and hit a flamethrower on your way out, there are ways to talk about it. Seriously, call me, we can figure it out. There's some truthful way that you can navigate around it, and somebody who still likes you who can be a reference. And be in alignment. Look for companies that's a cultural fit. Apply for jobs you actually want to do, not what you think you should do. Look for clues about how people interact with each other. Do they speak nicely about each other? Here's the thing. Oh, you know what? Your job will require you to work with Steve in finance a lot. Yeah, you know what? He's a stickler for details, but he's a really good guy. That's a good thing. Okay. But if you get a little bit of the, yeah, we got to work with finance, and a little bit of an eye roll, that's maybe not a great sign of respect in between the different silos within an organization. So look how they talk about each other, how they talk about the job, how they talk about the boss. Know your values and don't compromise them. If you believe in the lifetime value of a client and you're working for a company that has transactional clients, probably not a fit. And avoid collapsing into negativity, even in extended transition. I know how hard it is. This is what I do every day, is help people in it, but it just takes one job and your life is back on track. So I'm gonna pop back. I'm so glad you joined this webinar today. I hope you got some value from it. Please reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to be helpful in any way I can. Oh, you're welcome, Mama. Yeah, PTSD. People think they're crazy when I talk about this PTSD thing. It's no joke. I had 2 clients this year have to go inpatient because of that, between COVID and some other stuff that happened in their career. By the way, Family Medical Leave Act doesn't necessarily save your job. Both were on FMLA, both came back from their FMLA leave, were told they weren't doing their job and were fired. Oops. Does that do a tap dance on your head when your employer knew that you were having mental health issues and getting support for that, and then they fire you? Yeah, there's a lot of shitty stuff. Oh, sorry. There's a lot of stuff going out there that's not really ready for prime time.
Do we have time for one more question, please?
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen a situation where the candidate who is a candidate that's quite experienced and has been a hiring manager is in an interview, and the person does so well and because has rehearsed so well, and that the interviewer starts to have that perception that that candidate can be a threat?
Ooh. Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking because I have hired 79 different people, and in one of the interviews I had to watch myself because the candidate was so good that for a split second I had that feeling that, well, he could be my boss. He's so good. So I had to watch myself to make sure that was not a factor. I really had to catch myself. So have you seen that situation where the candidate can be perceived as a threat to the interviewer?
Yeah, I think that probably happens a lot. What would I say on the, on the interviewer side, and you have this amazing candidate, management best practices are you should hire people who are smarter than you. And that's a good practice, although it might hit your ego. You're like, whoa, that person is a rock star. I don't know if I want to work with them. They're going to make me, and it could trigger any kind of self-doubts that you have. Oh my God, everybody's going to find out I've been faking it for 20 years. Because we all have that. We all have it. So it might trigger that. I might refer you to Steve Farber's work and his Greater Than Yourself book, where he gets on his soapbox big time about how you should always hire people greater than yourself and seek to elevate your employees or your subordinates or your colleagues to their highest potential, which may be higher than you. So I'd ask you to do that. From a candidate point of view, don't dim your light though. If you potentially could be their boss, and you may interview for jobs where you could be, I ask you to flip the script though. So to not get that response from the hiring manager, I would have you go in, what can I take off your plate? How can I support you? How can I extend you? Everybody has too much to do. What meetings could I attend that you don't personally have to be there? If you go in that you are selling, basically giving someone their time back or helping to make them money. So you're going in with that expectation of how you can make your boss look good, or figuring out how they're evaluated and how you can contribute to them looking good. Even if you are a total rock star, you're not going to hit that self-doubt in a person who's pretty mentally healthy.
So the strategy is basically to provide information that you're trying to ease their pain. Try to understand their pain and how you can be a healer or a helper on there.
Yeah, wouldn't you want to hire the person who wanted to take stuff off your plate so that the higher value activities that you really need to be doing and you're not doing, whatever stuff you don't have to be doing or hate? I mean, who wouldn't want to hire that person? You, I want to hire you. And can you start Tuesday? Right?
Correct. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, we're at the end. Did everybody get some good value from that? Any last minute questions to me? I'm pretty sure you haven't heard this kind of talk before. It's not your normal job search talk. All right. Well, I will stay on. This concludes our webinar. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I did record it. I will try and send it out if I can figure out how all your registration stuff came in. This is the first time I'm doing it, but I did record it and I will send it out. If not, it'll be on my LinkedIn profile and you can get it there. Any other questions?
Just want to say
Comments?
thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. I like the blunt point and the straightforward approach. That's much appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much for your great comments. You have really added some really important points.
Less corporate and more practical, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Catherine, if you don't mind, I'll chime in with a couple things.
Please. I'd love to hear somebody else's point of view. I get into kind of an echo chamber about this.
Just to jump, two things to jump off what Ibrahim said. In addition to everything you said, Catherine, I think there's an interesting balance we have to, when we're interviewing for anything, there's an interesting balance between humility and confidence. So you want to be confident, but not arrogant and curious, because you just don't know their environment. You don't know what's really going on there. So you're going to have to learn. So, and then the other thing I was going to say, picking up on what we said a little earlier, in some of my consulting work, I chaired search committees, and they always hired for energy. They hired for energy. So the person who came in, who'd already done the job and had all the expertise and all the subject matter knowledge, lost out to the younger guy who flew up to Chicago and dropped off his package in the office, and they all knew that. And then, he was less experienced, but his energy, and everybody loved him. And that was multiple times on multiple search committees. So it's like really what you're bringing to the interview. Like you said, people hire who they like.
They do hire who they like, and they hire for affinity. This person thinks about the problems kind of in the way we do. This person has the same attitude about the client comes first and we go the extra mile for the client. It really, and for you as a candidate working for a company, let me give you an example. I worked for two of the big four, well, they were big five, Arthur Andersen and KPMG. On their websites, more or less the same company. You would be like, yeah, whatever, the global accounting firm, whatevs. One company, very different, very political, very individualistic, very backstabby, not a fit for me. One, very collaborative, super nice people, a policy of non-bullying, supportive management. I would have loved to retire there. But in the website, absolutely the same thing. So it's what fits for you. How do you like to work? What kind of, do you more or less like these people? Would you invite them over to your house, or are you like running for the door at 5:45 and like, see ya? That's that's a good thing. But I have had, especially my entrepreneur to employee clients, they have to go for fit, because if it's not an emotional fit, an affinity type of fit, or a business values fit, they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna go start a company with my brother-in-law, I'm out of here. But okay, thank you, everybody. I'm gonna stay on in case anybody has a burning question they didn't want to share.
Thank you, Catherine.
Great webinar, Catherine.
Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate your feedback and your extra different point of view. Very helpful.
It's fun to be with you. Take care.
Bye.